Hello there, my name is Derek Taylor, and this is the introductory video to my online course for the spring of 2022, HIST 135, Eastern Civilization. If you're watching this, you're going to be doing the course with me this semester. So this is a little introduction in which I'm going to go over syllabus, the parameters of the course, talk about what's required of you, what books you need, those sorts of things. And just in general, introduce the topic to you because you're probably not familiar with Eastern civilization. In a weird way, there really isn't any one singular Eastern civilization. There are actually several, and in fact, we're going to get to two main ones in this course, more or less. But that's what we're doing, and so let me get started here. Introduce myself. Derek Taylor, your professor. I have my PhD from KU, been teaching at Johnson County Community College for many years now, and so hope you enjoy this course, get something out of it. So let me, without further ado, get into this here, and we'll go over the syllabus. The syllabus, you can see, you can find it on the Canvas page for this course. You can see my information there, the CRN number, the section number, all that stuff. Email address, most important thing. I will usually contact you by email. Don't normally, if people leave messages, I don't normally return them. I'm not on campus to return them. So email is the best way. I usually get back very quickly with students. So I'm good about that. My office on campus, if you do need to see me, is OCB 261J. I can come on campus if you're in the area. And if you do want to meet with me and talk with me and actually communicate, you could do it via Zoom or by appointment on campus. And so just a quick overview of the course. And it's designed as a survey course, general survey course, meant to give you some familiarity with the major civilizations of Asia and their historical development of the present day. In particular, two, the history and influence of Chinese and Indian civilization throughout Asia. And you can kind of see, you didn't notice that the background of my Zoom thing here is actually a satellite photo of Southeast Asia. And we're have to read a couple of books that'll talk about the influence of Chinese civilization based on the Chinese language, the written language, and its influence in mainland China throughout throughout Asia over many centuries up to the present day. This is going to be a full survey from ancient times up to the present. Very broad global sort of overview, and as well Indian civilization, which we probably don't think normally of being spreading beyond the boundaries of the Indian subcontinent. However, of course, as we'll see, certain aspects of it become even globalized. And even more interestingly, I didn't know this before I started teaching this course, Indian civilization actually expanded outside of the mainland of Asia itself, as you'll see in your reading. So it's an interesting time frame and relevance here. And again, if you're watching this, most likely not all the time, maybe some of you are from some of these civilizations yourself, but you're like me, some of it comes from a different civilization, Western. It's a very good, very interesting. If you're having to take our Western Civ courses here at Johnson County Community College, which I also teach on occasion. Again, this is much more broad, but fascinating to compare. There's a lot of things that you can compare here, and we'll talk about this a little bit going forward here. But that's the goal. Well, that's the overview. The goals are, again, try to get you to learn basic things about this subject, this very broad subject. And upon successful completion of this course, you should be able to at least demonstrate to me the ability to prioritize, interpret, and synthesize historical materials and ideas, write and otherwise communicate clearly, writing in this course, describe major events and developments in the history of the civilizations that, of course, describe and discuss the principal characteristics of the societies under study. Again, broad generalizations about these very, very ancient civilizations. Then finally, grasp the global and regional patterns that impacted the societies studied in this course, articulate them in writing. One of the things we're going to emphasize, you'll see the text I've chosen for you, kind of emphasize the regional influence of these civilizations. We tend to think of things in terms of nation states. That's a very recent historical idea in many respects. One that, by the way, has taken root in those places. There's a state, India, Republic of India, People's Republic of China, and so on and so forth. But it's not surprising how widespread Chinese civilization is. But again, like I mentioned, Indian civilization has more influence than you'd think as well. And so to the required texts, we have two, Charles Holcomb, A History of East Asia, which, and this is kind of, we can see this here. Anyway, see that right there. History of East Asia. It's kind of a big, thick book. Oops, disappearing. It's a big, thick book. And again, one of the purposes of the course teaches you to think of Asia as a region united by a specific civilization. That's Holcomb's idea. It's a good book, an interesting book. He'll emphasize, I think, too much civilization at the expense of the nature of states. He tends to be relentlessly relativistic about the nation state. You'll see why in the course of the book. But he makes it's an interesting study because mostly in this course you would get a history, and you'll get mostly the history of Japan and China. Those are the two major civilizations that impacted the world. But this book will actually take a look at the formations of those societies on the, let's say, outskirts of Chinese civilization, Japanese civilization, but of Korea, Vietnam, what the author Holcomb calls Greater China, that is Singapore, Hong Kong, the background of those places, some of which are been in the news, of course. Hong Kong, vis-a-vis the Chinese mainland. If you don't know the backstory, the relationship between those two countries, you'll get it in this book and in this course. We talk about it here, the whys and wherefores of this, and to think of it, he organizes that book in terms of the influence of Chinese civilization by its language, or languages, I should say. There's several, but Mandarin Chinese as one of the great world languages. And so that's going to be the focus of East Asia, that sort of history. Again, very useful, of course. Things are going on between the United States, obviously, and China these days. You want some of the background about, for example, what's going on in Northwest China, the Uyghur peoples of Northwest China, what the background is, that you'll understand some of this. Because this relates to changes that happened in the Chinese Empire in the 18th century as they were expanding westward. Same thing, similar things you'll see happening in the history of the United States, but it's fascinating, the deep backstory of this sort of stuff. And so that's the book for History of East Asia. You also get another book, India, A Brief History of a Civilization. That's the full title, it doesn't have that there, by Thomas J. Troutman. It's actually a little smaller. The History of East Asia book's big and thick. These are both, if you're wondering why these shows these texts, they're both, the first one's harder to read. The print is very small, there's a lot of chapters. It's physically, I admit I chose it before I'd actually read it. It's a physically big book, kind of a doorstopper. Whereas this one's much more compact and, an introduction to the history of India, which is also ancient. It goes back several thousand years, ultimately, both of them. Although both of your authors are kind of modern academics, they want to emphasize change, and they'll cast a skeptical eye on claims to total continuity over time in these civilizations. But this book also emphasizes the cultural reach, and Troutman will also emphasize, in terms of what makes India a particular civilization, two things: social structure, the caste system, which, by the way, as you'll see in the reading, is very different today than it was in ancient times, or it still exists in a certain form. And then religion. In fact, that's actually one of the two things you'll see that unites both of those, these civilizations here, as we're talking about them, is religion, because one of the ones that becomes the major universal religion that spreads beyond the borders of Asia is Buddhism. Will have an major influence on all the civilizations we're talking about here: Japan, China, Korea, India. So you'll have those things in common, but he'll emphasize that, and they all build up to, of course, modern times. You have the creation of the major nation states of Asia. And so you'll have that as coverage in this course. And then finally, a few other things that I may provide for you, may or may not, we'll see. Grading in the course. this up here, zoom this so you can see a little better. You have 4 categories of assignments. One is a final essay, which will be 30% of your grade. I'll get to in a moment. There'll be 4 exams. I'll get to those as well. It's a quarter of your grade. Discussion. You will have to post questions for discussion every week in this course. To that in a moment. That's a big part of your grade. You'll be reading along and discussing with your students as you go along. And then finally, I'm going to have you watch a couple of films from both of these civilizations. Get you some modern day exposure to these civilizations, and you'll write reviews of them. So you have a couple more writing assignments besides the essay. And up to 100%. Your grading scale is the standard 190A, 8980B, 7970C, and so on and so forth. Assignments. Again, I mentioned discussion. So I'll also show you in a moment. There's going to be discussion fora. And so for each week's assigned readings, you'll have a discussion forum where you have to do 2 things. One, you have to post 2 questions over that week's readings, which reference by quotation and or page number. So you have to put, a direct quote from the book if you do that, or put what you have to reference something in the text so that everybody has something they can latch onto when they want to answer your questions. And the idea is to get you to ask broad enough questions that people can respond to while still being connected to the readings. Shouldn't be that difficult. You don't know that much about these civilizations, and we're covering such a broad time scale. And the things the authors will point out to you will be sufficient, I think, to point you in the right direction. And then you respond to at least two of your fellow students' questions, and then try to have a little bit of a discussion. Because again, these are things, and I will be responding, by the way, to your questions in the discussion forum. I mentioned this. This is mostly how you're going to communicate with me in this course. There's no live Zoom scheduled things in this course. I tried to do that in the past with these online courses, and students wouldn't do it. So, but this is the way, if you want to talk to me, this is the best way to do it. So you can drop me a question. You can ask me a question, I guess, if you want here, but it's mostly to get you to address each other. But I will definitely be dropping in, may ask a question of my own from time to time, and just to sort of work through some of these things, because it's a lot of information I'm going to overload you with in these books. In fact, let me show you for a moment where these are at. You can find all of this stuff on the Canvas landing page. You can see this by syllabus. Here are the discussion fora. They all go down this way. They're listed by chapters. So for each week, you'll see how to have a chapter or two, usually a couple of chapters to read. A lot to read in this course. It'd be easier going once you get to the end of your book. It's not as much, it's not as physically as much to read, but you go to them and you'll click on this, post a question, those sorts of things. Everything's set up for you there in the discussion forum. We'll go back to the syllabus for a second. All right, so those are the exams. Excuse me, the discussion forum. You'll have 4 exams over the textbooks in the course. They'll what you're studying. So, and again, there'll be multiple choice, maybe some true or false questions, stuff like that thrown in there. So a few map questions, I think, not many. And the first 2 exams will cover the first half of each of the books, and the second exam will cover the second half of the books. One thing that's actually wrong. I need to change that. It will be changed by the time you see this. You'll be able to use your textbook, but it's going to be time limited, and you only get 1 attempt at these exams. So you can use your textbook to take good enough notes. If you can use that, that's fine with me. I want you to basically learn where you can go find this information, but you have to complete them in a 2.5 hour time frame by the dates given in the course schedule, which we'll go through in a moment. And then finally, you'll be required to rent. I couldn't find copies I could direct you to that were free. To rent and watch 2 films from Asian cultures, and then write a short essay of 3 double-spaced pages reviewing them. The 2 films. The first is Infernal Affairs. If you don't know what this is a film made in Hong Kong in 2002. And Infernal Affairs is it's a police movie. It's a police drama. It's a crime police drama, I guess you could say. And if you don't know, if you ever, you know who Martin Scorsese is, probably an American director. He won an Oscar for a film called The Departed, which is a police, bad police, mob movie. And it was actually a remake of this film, Infernal Affairs. It's about a police officer in the Hong Kong Police Department who infiltrates as a mole a gang, and they have gangs in Hong Kong called triads, who migrated from the Chinese mainland to Hong Kong after the Second World War, after the Chinese communists took over in mainland China. And aside from the guy in the police department, there's a guy, one of the triad, one of the gangs, who also infiltrates the police department. It's a fine film. I think it's actually a better film than Scorsese. It's not better visually, but I think it's a better movie. Definitely a more interesting ending in some regards. And then finally, Razi, which is an Indian film made in 2018, so a little more recent. And it's a film based on a book, a novel, based on a true story about the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. This was a war between the nation of India, nation of Pakistan. If you don't know the backstory to that, India and Pakistan were created out of the aftermath of the withdrawal of the British from India. They colonized India. When they left, the land was partitioned into two countries. Don't get along very well together. If you follow the international news, if you don't, this is something that will explain some of the backstory to it. But this actual film is about a woman who actually is an Indian woman who actually becomes a spy during this conflict. So fascinating sort of idea film, and interesting things about this, because one of the things you don't know about this, or the novel it's based on, it's an Indian novel published in India, but it was published in English. That's the sort of lingua franca of all, because there's a lot of different languages, dialects in the Indian subcontinent. However, the film is actually in Hindi, which is one of the major languages of the Indian subcontinent. So it's a fascinating thing. If you watch, again, to give an idea why I want you to watch these, is because they're both produced in an age of globalization. So Ozzy kind of speaks for itself. Infernal Affairs, just watch them film and see. It's in Chinese, it's in Mandarin, if I'm mistaken. And just see how many words of English gets dropped into the film by characters in Infernal Affairs. You'll be surprised, I think. And I have information on this. I'll go back and for this in a second. I want to keep going back and forth in the film review module. Back to that. Then finally, I have to write an essay, minimum of 5 double-spaced pages, comparing East Asia with India as civilization. So I'll go through that in a moment as well. And there's a module for that on Canvas. Class policies. Makeup policies. There are no makeup examinations, and late work will not be accepted, save for documented emergencies of a grave illness or death in the immediate family. Students who miss these will receive a 0. Vacations, work schedules, car or computer trouble do not count as emergencies. Students should get in touch with the professor as soon as possible if emergencies arise. I again, can't stress this enough. Taking this online course, students always tell me, look, I'm taking this course to do work at my own pace. That's great. That means you don't have the excuse to what you need me to do things on time. And again, if it's your child is gravely ill, you're gravely ill, COVID, something like that, those things will receive it, but not vacations, not work schedules. It shouldn't be a car problem, but computer problems, again, get things into me as soon as you can. But you need to have regular access to computers. That is your responsibility, not my own. Academic honesty policy. I always put this in my syllabi. Students are bound by all sections of the student code of conduct. You can find where that is. And any violations of your college's academic honesty policy may result in failure, even dismissal from the college, failure of the course, or dismissal from the college. The biggest thing is plagiarism in this course. Plagiarism is a form of cheating which involves 1, representing all or part of someone else's work as your own, or 2, copying anything, including wording, no matter how short, from something written by someone else without citing the source. This means you should not borrow even phraseology. That is to say, you change like 1 or 2 words. If you cut and paste an entire paragraph from a source online, and then change like 3 words, I'm going to notice. Trust me. In fact, when you're going to turn your assignments in through Canvas, we have Turnitin.com to check your work anyway. I probably wouldn't even need it at this point. I've gotten so used to doing this, but you should not do that without giving credit. You must also, of course, give credit when you're quoting other material. And I have had, again, some very strange attempts at this lately. Any instance of plagiarism result in a failing grade for the assignment and possibly for the course, depending on the nature of the offense. And to give you an example, not just the film reviews, the essay, I actually had a student last semester. She was literally plagiarizing questions in the discussion forum. Seriously. She's cutting and pasting other people's questions and putting them in there. I'm like, you do realize I read these things, correct? And she's once I told her that she stopped participating in the course, but you're not going to get away with it, so don't even try. Just be ready to do the work and do the best you can. Student accommodations, again, if you have disabilities, anything like this, call or email access services. Get with them as soon as possible. I'll make whatever arrangements you need. I have no problem doing so. So schedule was laid out week by week. First thing you should do is watch this video, but then you need to get a hold of the book as soon as possible. If you were in the area, go to campus. You can rent the books. It's a little cheaper. The India books, neither one of them are excessively expensive, but not necessarily cheap either. You need to have them quickly. Get them. If you can't get them from the bookstore, try to order them online. It may take a while. It might take a week to get there if you don't do that. There should be, I think, I don't know, if you can find electronic versions of this book, I get that, that's fine, obviously. Go look for that stuff and let me know if you have a problem with it. You can see discussion intro, you have the readings and then the assignments in boldface there pretty much every week. We're talking the weeks, goes week by week. Mostly your discussions will be due, I believe, on Saturday evenings. So you'll have a few days to get that stuff done. Pretty much bi-weekly. The first exam, East Asia exam, will be due February 13th. That'll be a Sunday, I think, night. That goes on, down to, and then March. In this course, it's an online course. This technically shouldn't matter, but I still feel like you should get spring break off. So I don't assign anything until you come back from spring. You don't have anything due until you come back from spring break. That's why there's a week gap there. I hope you don't do any work on spring break that week anyway, or do something else. But all of that's due when you come back. The first film review, the second exam by the end of that week. You see the dates there. After March, we'll turn into the last, you see, we spend most of the time, the majority of the course on East Asia. It's a bigger book, covers greater territory. The last 6 weeks, we'll deal with India. And again, same deal, has the dates there. First exam is on April the 16th, 17th, excuse me, due by then. And then the very, very last week, exam week of exam, and your essays due in 5/14. One last thing about this, this little addenda thing I put at the end of my syllabi. The instructor reserves the right to make changes to the syllabus when circumstances make it necessary. Students be made aware of any modifications as soon as possible. I'm not going to make radical root and branch changes to the course, how you're graded, add new assignments, nothing like that. This is just in case something comes up we didn't anticipate and need to make allowances for it. Don't freak out. That's basically what that is. Okay. So a couple of things I want to show you, the assignments. We'll go up here and talk about discussion for talk about the film reviews for a second. Again, I have here you have the assignment itself. This is the film review. We'll look at this for a second. I think this is, and again, pretty straightforward. You've ever written a film review, just reviewing the events in the film. Besides running basic information about it, we have to answer a couple of questions. And the first one is, how does the history presented in whichever text it is, History of East Asia or India, Brief History of Civilization, inform the film? Meaning, what in those textbook, the textbook you read helps you understand the film better. Basically, I need direct links from the readings between the readings and the film. Once you connect what you've read to what you're watching. Two, what kinds of influence from non-Asian civilizations can you detect in these films, if any? How do the filmmakers appropriate stylistic or other elements from either their own history, that is going back to these ancient civilizations, right? So they can reach back, and you will see some actually in both of those films, or that of other cultures to tell their story. So I've also provided, and I'll show you this in a second, some journalistic articles to help you with immediate background of both films. You can use these and the textbook as references for your film. I also have a couple of little items there I'll show you in a moment to help you with the basic structure of film review if you've never done that. So directions, again, times whatever, it's double space pages, proofread, please proofread. Your teachers will love you for it. Again, he's probably review the basic contours of the film, must address those historical questions. There's no research is required for this assignment, just other than the stuff I provided for you. If you want to, you should cite it by putting the title in parentheses with a hyperlink or the author's name. But do not cite internet encyclopedias. Just avoid that. You've got enough material between those two books, the stuff I've given you to do that. So that's the basic, I won't go through too much detail, the basic outline of the assignment. You have a couple of things here. I have, this is from the Duke Film School, just a little thing about how to do a review. Again, it's good to have a little plan how to do this. Gives you, ton more writing the review, that stuff. That gives you a breakdown, introduction, plot, summary, description, analysis. You don't have to take all that as gospel, but just give you some idea of how you might go about doing that. It's pretty simple. It's not that different from a book review, which I hope you have done in high school. And a glossary of film terms. Again, I want you to think about the actual film component of these films, by the way, because film is an international language. Something that's good to know, actually. And then finally, in both of these, both for Infernal Affairs and Razi, you have, I have a couple of online articles. And here you have a little article about the Hong Kong triads from the South China Morning Post newspaper, and then a little article on the 1971 India-Pakistan War. Give you some extra background on those events, so help you out with that stuff there. And then finally, you have the essay, and we'll go through this. The assignment here is to take a look at it. Yeah, and so compare these two civilizations and answer this question. In what ways have the ancient history and traditions of these civilizations influenced the process of modernization? And what I mean by in each of these civilizations, what I mean by that is how much have those traditions survived or influenced the way they've modernized in these places? I'm thinking like transition to the nation state, transition to an industrial, post-industrial economy in these places, and the process of globalization. And the reason why I asked that question is that's something, of course, we deal with in Western countries. What's the relationship between all the things that came before the modern era and that here? It's still a going thing, right? Things like religion, things like, lots of things, actually. And you can see that playing itself out. The books we inform about that. Because knowing the broad sweep of again, you're not becoming an expert on these civilizations in this course, but having a broad knowledge of the formative characteristics of these civilizations, I still think tells you something about what they are like today, as it can do in Western civilization. That's why you should take the Western civilization courses as well, so you can know your own civilization better. In any case, again, minimum 5 spaces, double space. You will have a works cited page. That'll be fine. If you need one, yeah, you will have one actually. Title, which should be your answer in brief to that question. So your title should be an answer to that. Introduction with a thesis, body with paragraphs addressing history, modernization stuff, and then a conclusion. Cite your textbook for references. That's why, again, if you can use internet sources, no online encyclopedias, no online news stuff. If you are uncertain about what kind of sources you should use, if you want to use extra stuff, ask me first. Do not just go do it. Come talk to me, and then a works cited page and grading rubrics there. And so that is that. It's pretty simple, the basics of the course. You do have to keep up with it, however. So it's a little bit of a, it's a yeah, it's a broad survey of what we're calling Eastern civilization here. Although, like I said before, you're not learning about one civilization, but two. And so I hope you go with this with an open mind, get a little bit of information about. Again, these are two major, they feed into a couple of major states in the world today. India and China have had some. If you don't, if you pay attention to the news, have had some. They've had some conflicts recently in the last few years. India is a nuclear power. China, of course, is one of the bogeymen for the United States these days, for good reasons. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it is one of the sort of perceived as a competitor. So lots of reasons to take this course, to take seriously the readings and go through it. And when you read, by the way, take notes. Write in the book. Even if you've rented it, you can go do that. Nobody cares. They'll just rent it again. That'll help you with the exams. It'll help you with your essay. You can go back and look at your notes. And yeah, think of things to ask the class and myself in the discussion for us. So that is it. That is introduction to Eastern civilization. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll do the best I can to answer if I have not explained everything clearly enough here. And that's it. This is my introduction. Hopefully you get to see my face, that you know that you do actually have a teacher. I'm not a robot. They haven't replaced me with AI yet. So if you do see me on campus, and I don't know if you can tell who I am, if we have to wear masks on campus, give me a holler and say hi. So that's it. Hopefully you will enjoy the course. See you guys, hear from you guys in the discussion for us soon. Take care.